Time now to move on to the Coral-Eclipse, the feature event of the week. And it was a race short on runners, but plenty of quality in there, and a complete and utter world-class superstar, in my opinion, in the shape of the very well-backed St Mark Basilica, who went off at even money. He'd been available at round about 11 to 8 earlier in the day, but backed into odds on, and then just slight drift to evens just before the off. Mishrif provided stern opposition to 9 to 4, following on from his Shima Classic success. Addeybb was 7 to 2, and the ground was just about right for him. It was good to soft, a little bit softer than on day one, and El Drama was the outsider at 28 to 1. Let's see how the Coral-Eclipse panned out and send them on their way. I think the first thing to realise about this race was that it was very steadily run. They crawled in the early stages. Addeybb takes them along. Mishrif, you can see his head bowed low, just a little bit keen in second place. And then your winner here, this brilliant racehorse, the winner of the French Guineas and the French Derby, St Mark's Basilica. The outsider, El Drama, out the back. El Drama runs pretty well. He finishes quite close up. And that's not because this is a weak Coral-Eclipse. That's because of the pace. They went very steady in the early stages. There were some sub-12-second furlongs later on in the race, but the early fractions, according to course tracks, were really, really steady. A time form speed figure in the low 80s for this. You'd expect well over 100 for it. And the finishing speed percentage is what tells us what happened here. You would expect a finishing speed percentage of 100.5, and that is data-led on previous races run here over this trip of 1.25 miles. But the last 3 furlongs of this Coral-Eclipse, 109.2. St Mark's Basilica finished off the race 9.2% quicker through the final 3 furlongs than he ran the early stages of the contest. He quickened like a Mustang to win this. The crawling now turning in, Mishrif a bit too keen, Tom Marquand just trying to dictate a steady gallop on Addeybb, and now they'll begin to wind it up. And it's St Mark's Basilica who has far too much speed for these. He quickens fantastically well, and he comes home, remember, in softish ground in 36.19. He is a world-class racehorse, make no mistake about it, and he is miles better than the Bear result. What would he have done to these if they'd gone a good gallop? I think he would have won by even further than the distance that he won here, which was clear daylight in the end. Mishrif, well, he was going best, 3 out, but he didn't find a lot. He didn't quicken. Addeybb, well, he boxed on gamely and ran really well and got back past Mishrif. But look at St Mark's Basilica, clearing away through that final furlong. He is a tremendous racehorse, and there's going to be a lot more to come from him when he's up in class and when he gets a better gallop to go at. He produced a fantastic time when he won in France. He is capable of running faster than this. But this was completely and utterly tactical, this Coral-Eclipse. 4 races were run over this distance at Sandown on Friday and on Saturday. And this was the slowest, and we'll illustrate that in a moment or two. But that doesn't mean this was the worst performance. This was the best performance of the weekend by a country mile. I think he is a real prospect for big races going forward. And just look at that. That's what you've got to remember. The finishing speed percentage, 109.2, telling us that for a Group 1 contest, they just crawled early on and then finished off really strongly. Well, he did. He finished stronger than the rest. What do we make of Mishrif? Well, some thought that perhaps he needed the run, perhaps he didn't like the ground, perhaps he was too keen. I think he's just beaten by a brilliant racehorse. It was a steadily run Group 1 then, won by what I would say is a very fast horse. I think he'll always be best at around about 1.25 miles. Maybe, because the downside of the pedigree is by Galileo, he's by Siyouni himself, and it's the family of Sotsas who won the Arc. So there's a chance at 1.5 miles, but I think this sort of trip will really suit him because he's so fast. What else have we got? The final 3 furlongs, I highlighted that a little bit earlier on, 36.19 seconds. That's really good, uphill in softish ground. He really flew through those final 3 furlongs, and they just couldn't live with him. And he was the only horse in the race to run sub-12 furlongs for the furlongs, 7th furlong, 8th furlong and 9th furlong. That's how superior he was to all of them. Pedigree, I've just mentioned it. He's Siyouni out of a Galileo mare. It's along the same lines as the Arc winner, Sotsas. So those that fancy him for the Arc will take some sucker from that, and he may well be aimed at the Arc somewhere down the line. But I think Aidan O'Brien has possibly the Sussex Stakes in mind. He is entered in that. Juddmonte International, almost certainly, and the Champions Stakes in Ireland. Those races will be on the agenda, possibly the Arc later on. And what is the main thing about this horse? Well, he is just a fast racehorse. He's got loads and loads of speed, and I think he's one of the best horses in the world right now as classifications stand. I think he's an absolute superstar, trained by that man, Aidan O'Brien, who was winning his 6th Coral-Eclipse. So that's St Mark's Basilica. I mentioned the fact that it was the slowest 1.25 mile race of the weekend at Sandown Park, and we can put that into a little bit of context because we had some other good performances at this trip, and we'll look at some of them in detail in a moment or two. But let's just highlight what he did in comparison to the others that won their races over this particular trip. Yukon Glen, he won on Friday, you'll remember, a strongly run race, and he was the fastest over this trip at 2 minutes 8.97, trained by Jim Goldie, and the finishing speed percentage 100.8. So he was rated superbly through this race to get the most out of him. You remember they went a very, very strong gallop, and he finished off strongly, and that was a quick time. We then come to Saturday. The ground was slower. Macram 2 minutes 9.11, Wink of an Eye 2:10.52, and St Mark's Basilica, the slowest, at 2:10.87. Does that mean if the four of them met, he'd come last? Oh no. Oh no, because the sectionals tell us just how fast he can run, and if they all met and got a good gallop, he'd beat them, St Mark's Basilica. There's no doubt about that. Look at his finishing speed percentage, 109.2. It was nowhere near an evenly run affair. Macram and Wink of an Eye, they were strongly run races because they dipped under 100% in terms of finishing speed percentage. So they have run really well in strongly run races. But St Mark's Basilica, he's much better than that, 2:10.87. He can run loads faster than that. And it tells us that finishing times don't always paint the correct picture.